Hello, everybody. Hello, and hello for you who are just joining in. I am so excited to welcome you to this Country Navigators Masterclass, including you, why you need inclusion. So for those of you who don't know, Country Navigator is the #1 platform for cultural intelligence and inclusion training. My name is Anna Vukovic. I am a digital learning creator at Country Navigator, and inclusion is a topic that I deeply, deeply care about. I'm joining from Belgrade, Serbia, and I would like to also find out where you're joining from. So please post in chat so everyone can see where are you joining from. Okay, sorry if the producer Jen can just support me in a second because I can't see the chat. See Georgia, USA. Oh, here it is. Okay. So we have Serbia, Italy, Denver, Colorado, USA, Georgia, USA, Washington, DC, USA, Netherlands, Chicago, Illinois, England, Netherlands. I love this group. It's so culturally diverse. Germany, USA, Mexico City, again, Serbia, London, Mauritania, wonderful. Always wanted to visit Mauritania. And again, Germany, Novi Sad, Serbia. Thank you so much for joining in. It's a very culturally diverse room. I'm very happy to see that. And so it's very fantastic to have you all here. So in the next 1 hour, we will discuss about inclusion, what it is, what it really is, what we can do to bring it to our teams and organizations, how we can take an active part to really include and engage our colleagues and, bring better teams. And I would really like to start with emphasizing how far we've come when it comes to the topic of diversity, equity, and inclusion. You can see that everywhere we go, everyone kind of speaks about it, everyone talks about it. It has become a very, very big topic. And the thing is, especially in the past 5 years with the big movements like Me Too and Black Lives Matter and the huge impact that pandemic has had, really has brought the topic of diversity and inclusion to not just the center of our workplaces, but really at our dinner tables as well. And what happened as well is that it kind of generated a sea of questions. And it evoked many, many emotions, from confusion to guilt, from really just sheer anxiety and fear of getting it wrong, or of saying something and maybe offending someone. And that's where I would really like to start. And that's now I would like to ask, please, my producer to share a link in chat for a mural where I would like you to answer a question. Why is it so hard to talk about diversity? Okay, now you got the link in chat. Just click on the link and the browser will open the page with mural. And you can decide if you want to put in your name or just not and stay anonymous. That's perfectly fine. Double click anywhere on the whiteboard to add a sticky note, or double click on a sticky note that already is there to add your answer. And please, producer, if you can share the mural as well, so we can see it, so everyone can see it as well. Okay, here it is. So why is diversity so hard to talk about? What is so challenging about it, right? Especially at the workplace. Let's see what everyone thinks, especially such a culturally diverse group. See? Okay, answers are coming in. So let's see. It is definitely difficult for all of us. Don't forget that. So let's see what everyone thinks. So people worry about saying the wrong thing. Absolutely. That's that fear of maybe offending someone. We don't want our words to be seen as, we really don't want to unintentionally offend someone. And that fear is very strong and can very often paralyze us from joining in on the conversation at all, because it's about things very personal to others. Definitely, yes, these discussions can be very personal, especially for someone who has experienced, being marginalized. It can really be painful going back to that experience, which happens often when we have to talk about diversity. Or maybe if you've ever unintentionally offended someone, for you as well, it could be difficult to talk about diversity and brings that uncomfortable feeling back. Fear of offending, yes. Complexity, definitely. There is so much to talk about. Diversity is a huge topic, and just the sheer complexity of it can make it intimidating to talk about. Might not have the right language, absolutely. If we have an unpopular perspective, we may be afraid to talk, understandable. And what often happens is that polarization of views, definitely seen many times, unfortunately, that arguments, it can even turn into an argument, a heated discussion, and we get to that us versus them mindset, right, instead of a collaborative one. The theme is overused and therefore not clear anymore. All right, it's constantly changing and moving. Yes, it is complex and it is dynamic. Fear of offending, we have again invisible biases. Yes, that can also make it tricky to talk about, especially if we know of unconscious biases, and it might be uncomfortable for us to, find out what might be there, what might be the biases that we hold. Okay, oh, the term is overused and therefore not clear anymore. And I understood, sorry, that one better. Absolutely, yes. Might not have the right language. Okay, vocabulary, definitely. Lack of awareness. Thank you for this answer. Yeah, it's hard to be vulnerable. Definitely it is. Lack of knowledge, what we are talking when we say diversity. Yes, if we might feel that if we don't know enough, we can't really engage in the discussion constructively. Now let's go back. Thank you for this wonderful answers. Let's just go back to our slides quickly. You gave wonderful answers. Thank you for that. And what I would like to really do now is to quickly pull up a poll where you have 4 options, and I would like you to choose one that best describes what inclusion means to you. So we have 4 options: making sure you use politically correct language, treating everyone the same, making allowances for difference, or is it helping those from underrepresented groups get ahead? Which of these do you think, from your perspective, is the best definition of inclusion? We have 27% answered, okay. Okay. We're going to wait just a bit more. Okay, 64, we're getting there. Thank you. So which of these options best describes inclusion in your perspective? Just a couple of more, and then can end the poll and share the results with you. See what you think. Okay, maybe just 5 more seconds. Just remember, we're not hunting for wrong answers here. We're just, discussing about different perspectives of what inclusion means to us as well. Okay, I am going to end the poll now and share results with you. So we can see that making allowances for difference really got to 67% of the result, and definitely yes, it starts from a very noble standpoint, right? We want to be making allowances for difference means that we are acknowledging that difference exists. It means that we have to stop and look, okay, where that difference is. We have to ask ourselves, we have to learn. And the only issue that could be there with that one is how are we actually making those allowances, and how do we decide which allowances are the right ones? And this is the discussion about agency, which we will mention afterwards. Like, are we really including the people that we are making allowances for? And let's just quickly mention the other ones, making sure you use politically correct language. It is definitely important. Words are incredibly powerful and they can make the environment inclusive and exclusive, treating everyone the same. Again, noble, but it's all about upgrading from that golden rule, treating everyone the way I like to be treated, to the platinum rule, treat everyone as they would like to be treated. And lastly, helping those from underrepresented groups get ahead. Again, very, very important and noble, but then again, how are we helping them? How do we decide how we help them? Are we making assumptions, or are we including those underrepresented and asking them how they would like to help? Thank you for your wonderful, wonderful answers. Really gave a lot to this discussion. Now, what I would like to do now is just quickly move on to the next slide. This next slide. Okay. So where we will discuss a bit what inclusion is. Okay, so before I get into the definition of inclusion, I would first like to maybe differentiate it from diversity and equity. So diversity is really a fact of difference. It's about who's represented. It means having people from many different backgrounds in our team. It's about gender diversity, age diversity, could be about disability, can also be about cognitive diversity that is not really mentioned that much. It's about the difference how people think. It's only about the fact of difference. We have the difference in our team. Equity, it's very well, I think, understood when we compare it to equality. Equality is that treating everyone the same. Everyone gets the same opportunities, everyone gets the same treatment. But equity really takes into account the different opportunities that people had, that we're not really starting from the same position. And that's why equity really is kind of adjusting in their treatment, making in a way, making allowances actually for that difference, and thinking about how can we fix from where we start, really maybe kind of thinking about those historical injustices and current injustices, and give such treatment that will possibly help people get to the same result, thinking about we're not starting from the same point. And inclusion, it really glues all of that together. I would like to illustrate this with maybe musical orchestra. So diversity, it means we have many different instruments, from violins to drums, from trumpets to flutes. Equity would mean that each of these instruments has a moment to shine, which means we will give a violin a solo, or we will give drums mallets, soft mallets for a specific piece. So that's equity. And inclusion is really making sure that when all these instruments, all these artists play together, that it's a perfect symphony. They all collaborate perfectly. They complement each other. That's what inclusion is about. And it's the same in our organization. Having diversity is not enough. Just having people with different perspectives, different skill set is not enough. We have to make sure that they feel that they belong, that they feel that they can contribute, that they're integrated, that their voice is equally important as any other. And that's how we come to this definition that inclusion is, which you can see on the slide. It's the active valuing and respecting of all members of a group, incorporating different perspectives, values, and attitudes. All right. What I'd like to do now is please to come to the chat again and answer this question for me. How does inclusion feel like? Now, we spend so much time at work thinking, just thinking. What I would like to ask you is to kind of go back to that feeling when the work is done and we go back home and maybe share with our close ones, how did it feel to be included? Give us some good examples of inclusion in the chat, how it really feels like. Just share some of those examples in chat. What does inclusion feel like to you? How did it feel like when it happened? How did it look like? Any examples? Okay, so now we have first one, being heard, seen, valued, absolutely. Then another one, when I can be me at work without masking or hiding stuff away that I don't want to, absolutely. It's about being able to be authentic. Not feeling any difference, welcoming a plethora of different views without bias. Absolutely. It's again about that welcoming, belonging, inviting difference. The ability to live or exist authentically with my peers and colleagues. again, a wonderful one, being authentic. From Katerina, visible, respected, understood, great. Then everyone belongs there and feels like they're able to contribute their best. I really love this one, being respected and valued. Yes, thank you, Sandra Russell. Feels like I am truly listened to, definitely. Being treated equally. It feels very uplifting when my points of view are taken seriously and not dismissed because I have worked in the business less than someone else. That's it, just because we don't have the same experience, even when it comes to work, or maybe education, or just anything similar related to the positions. Just because maybe I have less experience or you have less experience doesn't mean that your view is less important. It's going to be different, and actually that's why it's valuable. Emmanuel, thank you. Feels powerful. Definitely, I love that one. It does feel powerful. I agree very much. Everyone feels welcome, feeling connected, not being judged. Yes, when we understand differences and are able to generate value from our different perspectives and opinions, feel respected, powerful, connected. When people hear my voice, even when I'm wrong. Yes, I love that one, Matthew. Thank you. You really gave wonderful responses, and you really, I think, perfectly mapped for everyone here what inclusion is. Now, before we move on to the next slide, I would quickly like to ask you for just a moment to think about how exclusion feels like. You don't have to share in chat. I would just like you to kind of go back to that experience, because we've all been there at some point, feeling excluded. And I'm asking you to do that because this is where I think the motivation to bring inclusion can really, really start. So with empathy, when we remember how it felt, when we really think about how it felt when we felt excluded. And that is definitely what happens. And just honestly, just the fact that you're at this masterclass, it means that you probably are aware of the importance of inclusion, but still is very valuable in order to push us to do more, is to think, how does exclusion feel like? Now I'd like to move on to the next slide to just quickly cover those really detrimental consequences of exclusion. And the first and the biggest one is probably like the moral and ethical case, which talks about discrimination. It is discrimination. And just discriminating against someone, excluding them, it really goes against basic tenets of fairness and humanity. It damages mental well-being. Absolutely, we know that. We know that the research and experience has shown us so many times that people who feel excluded, their mental health can really suffer. They burn out more easily, and they really even get sicker so much more than those who feel included. And finally, it is illegal. In many countries in the world, laws are in place to stop these things from happening. And then we get to the other side, which is, of course, still important. And what businesses often think about are the practical perspective, the practical case for inclusion. And that is that exclusion, it reduces effectiveness of the team, right? We know, the research has shown, that diverse teams outperform the teams that are not diverse. So if we're not tapping into that diversity and that richness of perspectives, we're really at loss, we're losing. It increases staff attrition and turnover. It's very expensive. Attrition is very expensive. Not only are you losing your valuable talent, but there are also additional costs connected to hiring and training the replacements, right? It restricts your talent pool. Again, if we're not being inclusive, we're really limiting our access to a diverse pool of talent, very, very valuable talent that's out there. It's demoralizing, it causes disengagement and increases unhealthy conflict, all of that very detrimental to business. And finally, reputational damage, right? Our brand, our reputation. And in this day of social media and very quick news outlets, the word about an organization being non-inclusive really spreads quite quickly. It can really be very, very harmful to a reputation. So that's about exclusion, right? We know that exclusion can be very, very, very harmful. And now I would like to quickly go to the next slide with the help of my producer, and give you a word of warning. So we know that authenticity is very important. It's important for individuals to be able to be authentic, but there's another authenticity that we need to mention here. That's authentic inclusion. Authentic inclusion. What happens very often today is that businesses want those benefits, right, of inclusive workspaces. They want the good reputation. So what they will do, they will invest in the marketing campaign. They will treat inclusion like it's just a checkbox. And that's called performative inclusion. Let me give you an example. A tech company launches a very powerful PR campaign, how they really, really care about gender diversity. They even share publicly a very ambitious goal that said 30% of women in leadership positions by 2025. And then what happened? That one of the women from their organization shared at some point a story that because she, at that point, she is a single mother and she really needed that flexibility in work and approached her managers to ask for more flexibility in her work, not to work from 9 to 5, but maybe from 7 to 3. And she was immediately rejected with answer that it will harm group cohesion and that everyone should be treated the same. That's the example of performative inclusion. Just one moment here to look at the chat. From Tanya, I always felt very disappointed when someone did not even take my ideas into consideration because they're at a higher position or because I'm a woman. I even had people saying to me, you will not understand. How annoying. Definitely very, very annoying. And it is exclusion, and it definitely really deeply affects do you feel as a part of the team and how much you will contribute. And if it happens, to go back to this point, if it happens in an organization that has this beautiful marketing campaign, how they really care about inclusion, and behavior like that is accepted, tolerated, normal, then we're talking about performative inclusion. Now, getting authenticity right, it's hard work, right? It really takes a lot of learning, a lot of trying, a lot of effort. And what often, again, happens where we could kind of want to try the short route, which is sometimes asking those who are underrepresented and marginalized to explain to us, okay, what can I do better? How do I fix this? How do I include you? Let me give you an example of where that leads. A young architect I used to work with, based in London, worked on a project that was supposed to redesign a Liverpool dock that used to be a center of transatlantic slave trade. What he did, he was supposed to do research, how to redesign this area. And he approached his friend from Nigeria and asked her, hey, are you also working on this project? Can you help me? Do you also know someone who's interested in the project? And the point of this story is really well made, and the book by Rennie Adol-Lodge. And I would like to ask my producer to share the name of the book in chat in case everyone is interested to read it. And I really, really recommend it. The book is called Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race. And it makes the point, very important one, that it is not the duty of those underrepresented and marginalized to educate us. It is not their duty to tell us what we're doing wrong or how we should do better. And what the young architect did is actually he also made an assumption based on her race that she should be interested in that project, that she should be there. It made sense to him. He made that assumption and deeply offended her. It kind of reinforced that stereotype. And again, he put it in a way unintentionally, but still put the responsibility of learning and educating himself on her. And so that was my second word of warning, really, who the responsibility is on. It's always the responsibility of on us to learn and to figure out what the best way is. Now, the question is, okay, how do we do it? How do we do it? This is why we're here, right? And the answer is an inclusive mindset. And we'll have a look at the next slide. what does inclusive mindset really look like? And this is where cultural intelligence comes in. The first part of cultural intelligence, the first part that we need to develop is attitude. And attitude is really about openness, and it's about curiosity and humility. It's about asking questions. How much do I know about myself? How much I know about the environment? It's about being open to difference, to understanding actually that there is not one normal, and there is just because something is normal to you and it's just something is common to you, it doesn't mean that it's common to everyone else and that it's normal to everyone else. It's really about that openness to difference and asking questions to figure out how it looks like, what it really is. The second one is awareness. Awareness is about self-awareness of our old cultural background and how it affected us. It's awareness of our unconscious biases. It's awareness also of how we affect other people, and it's awareness of how exclusion feels like. Another thing that kind of goes in this awareness that I like to talk about is privilege. And I like to talk about it because I kind of had to learn it with my own uncomfortable experience. Because when we talk about privilege, it's a tricky word, right? And you will often hear people say, I'm not privileged. I wasn't born rich. I had to work for everything that I have. And the problem with this, the issue with this statement is that it's only talking about income privilege. This is the example. I've worked with an international team once, and the Italian part of the team I noticed wasn't really reacting to me well, okay? They weren't really engaging with me, and I felt that, and honestly, I thought that they were biased because of where I come from. It had happened before. Very quickly, I talked to one of the teammates, and she told me, Anna, they're not engaging with you because they can't almost say a word next to you because your English is much better. You're talking too fast and you're talking too much, and they feel even intimidated by it. And that's the moment when I discovered my privilege. I felt that they were biased, that I was not aware that my privilege actually was my ability to speak a language so well. And I was leveraging that experience, that privilege on their behalf, creating the space only for myself. And this is why it's important to think about privilege, because it's also an opportunity to create a space for other people when we have it. And think about privilege as all those barriers that other people have and you don't, and you're not really aware of them because you're not thinking about them. You don't have to. It's about those different parts of your identity that never came up in a conversation. You're not actively thinking about them because they're not the ones that are in this environment creating really those barriers for you. Now, the next one is knowledge. Now, knowledge, again, is about learning about others. Again, it's our responsibility to sit down, to research, to ask questions, to figure out ways how we can learn more about an issue, more about the other culture, more about the other person. It's really that, again, attitude and awareness that we need to learn and to take responsibility for that. Now, the part of this masterclass, there is also a learning path. And in part of that learning path, you have something called World Prism Profile, which you can do. And at the end of the masterclass, my lovely producer will share the email, which you can, through which we can contact us, and you will get the access to the learning path. Basically, in this World Prism Profile, you complete an assessment, and it will give you your cultural profile, which will really, really help you to understand what are some of the preferences that you have, and you can compare it to other people and other cultures to see where those differences lie. And it's a very good starting position for building that awareness and knowledge. And the last one, okay, skills. In my opinion, probably the most important one, and this is where I would really like you to think, how can you translate all of this in your day-to-day behavior at your work? Let's go to the next slide and think a bit about what those skills are. So the first one, okay, let's see the first one. Okay, so the first one is curiosity. Again, it's about asking the question, who are the people that I work with? What are their values? What are their beliefs? That person that's maybe not as vocal, why are they not vocal? Is it maybe just the way they prefer to communicate? Or is it maybe something happening to them? Maybe they're excluded and I'm not really aware of that. That's why curiosity is important, to ask questions. The next one we have is courage. Courage is about admitting your mistakes. Getting all of this right is not easy. It means that we have to go into the uncomfortable arena, in uncomfortable discussions, and ask questions, and we will try and we will make a mistake. But courage is about admitting those mistakes, and it is a lot about how do we react to the feedback. That's all that matters. Do we accept it or do we get defensive? Being courage is about accepting that feedback, and also it's about speaking up when we see that an unfair treatment is really taking place. The next one that we see is cognizance, or bias aware. It's about being aware of our biases, how we affect other people. The next one, after being aware of our biases, is the collaboration. It's about inviting people to join in. It's about inviting to your colleagues to those water cooler conversations, to team chats, maybe to that drink after work, inviting them to different discussions, brainstorming sessions, asking about their opinion when it comes to important decisions that also includes them, finding ways to agree and not to disagree. That's collaboration. And the next one we have is commitment. Now, commitment is really about asking, again, being an ally, standing up, speaking up, and commitment is also asking for accountability. It's about being accountable, thinking about how can I really be accountable to make this actually happen. And it's about asking for accountability from our leaders. What will you do? How will you check if the progress is really happening? What questions will you ask to see that? What are the results of these DEI programs? Is it really meaningful? Where's the data? That's commitment. Now, what I would really, really like you to do now is to join a second mural that we have in this session. And we're going to focus on the three: curiosity, courage, and commitment. Please, the producer, if you can share the mural so we can see it. Again, click on the link, join the mural, and tell me, how are you going to translate this into your day-to-day behavior? Okay, this is the first mural. Just 1 second so we can have a look at it. Okay, now I see it as well. It's shared. So curiosity, tell us, how will you showcase that curiosity? How will you really find out who you're working with? What are the beliefs and attitudes and values of the people around you? Courage, how will you showcase courage? How can you really show that in your day-to-day behavior? And finally, commitment. This is the question: how will you commit? What can you do to bring about inclusion, to make your team or your workplace more inclusive? And how maybe will you ask for accountability from others to do the same? Okay, the answers are coming in. Let's see. Just gonna zoom in for 1 second so I can hear, so I can see well what you're writing. Okay, with curiosity, we have here definitely very important one: actively listen. It is so easy to not listen well, really, but actively listening really opens up that space and really, really invites people to share what they need to share, what they feel is important about them, about their identity, and it's important part of being curious. Actively listening to other people and truly understand how they feel, wonderful one. Yes, incorporate. Getting to know your questions into more gatherings. I really, really like this one. I think it's a very good idea. We often say that we would like for people to get to know each other better, right? But very often we expect it to happen on its own. But it doesn't happen on its own. So that's why really, like you said, incorporating the questions into gatherings, into meetings, maybe thinking of those quick social gatherings where it's not allowed to talk about work, right? That's where you can really push that getting to know each other better. Ask more questions, learn about others, absolutely. Spend more time knowing people I work with, avoid assumptions, always ask. I love this one, always avoid assumptions. It's always better to ask. Notice people's reactions, yes, listen to people, observe the behavior, observe your own behavior, especially the nonverbal behavior. Ask questions before stating my perspective. Ask why questions without assumptions. Yeah, we have that one as well, very good one. Making most of opportunities to learn, active listening. Yes, wonderful. Let's go quickly to the courage one. See some amazing suggestions. So courage, dare to speak why you're acting different if they don't understand. Don't treat it personal. Okay. The next one, speak up when I realize someone might be excluded or people tend to dismiss opinions which are different from theirs. Definitely, I very like this one, important, very important part of courage, right? Being a vocal, visible advocate for others, making an effort to question myself. Yes, this takes a lot of courage, really challenging yourself. Why do I think this way? If I disagree, why do I disagree? It can be very uncomfortable. It takes a lot of courage, but this is the place where you can really, really learn a lot. Don't be afraid to speak up, admit failure and how it fueled my own growth to create a safe space for others. Then we have start small talk with someone I would not normally talk to. Absolutely. This is, again, leaving your comfort zone. Getting to unfamiliar places, talking to someone who you don't know. It might seem scary a bit, of course, but again, an opportunity to learn a lot. To be open to look and see others and listen carefully, use my voice when I know it's needed. Yes, express how I see things impacting others, accept that others might be right some of the time. Yes, holding my opinion back to let others come forwards. It's about privilege, which we talked about, a wonderful one. Thank you. And lastly, let's see the commitment part, walking the talk. Absolutely, yes. Ask, how is that talk walked? Right, I love that one. Be an ally to support people who are out group in your in-group. Yes. Asking myself more if I'm really being inclusive, taking time to become aware of some unconscious bias I might have and eradicate those. A wonderful one. Thank you. Be a lot more aware of more hidden privilege, confidence to speak publicly. Absolutely. Privilege can really, really be hidden, especially because that's what makes a privilege, not thinking about it. That's why it is privilege. That's why it's hard sometimes to discover it. It's not so obvious. Take personal accountability, even if organizational commitment isn't there. Okay, I love that. But also it's important to, as of course, when it's possible, to ask for that organizational accountability as well. Provide a surety that you're heard, seeking repeated feedback on performance and improvement to look for real impact, support others no matter how uncomfortable it may be, keep challenging why and how we are doing things. Thank you. They were wonderful, wonderful answers. Now I would like to go back to the slide so we can continue on this and use really what we've shared and what we learned so far to continue. Okay, so now before we move on, it's a very important thing that I would like to talk about. It's about agency and allyship. Now, very often when we want to be inclusive and when organizations want to be inclusive, they think of different projects and programs and that consequently actually do not include but exclude. For example, it often happens with women leadership programs that they don't work. And the reason why they don't work is because women were often not asked who is going to be the mentor, what kind of mentor do they need. It's often not asked what the program should focus on. It's often not asked, what the learning objectives should be, in what way it should be done, when it should be done. The right way to do it would be to do a research of all employees, including women, to see what kind of program is really, really needed and will work the most. When we make assumptions of those who we want to include, and we make assumptions how they want to be included, we are taking the control from them. And which means this is about agency, we're taking the agency from them. When we want to be an ally, and when we want to help, and we want to include, never make assumptions. We always have to include them in that space, in that process, so they are really get what they need at the end of the day. And now the point about allyship. Speaking up is important. Very often we do want to speak up, right? But it's tricky. When do we speak up? How do we speak up? Do I do it? Do I not do it? Is it going to be even more harmful? And what I would like to offer you here is 3 things that you can think about when you're thinking, is this the moment where I should speak up and act as an ally in that way? Okay, just a little help with the producer so I can show what these 3 things are. So now, should I speak up? This is what you should think about: place, timing, relationship, and really, these are the questions. Place. Is this where I should say this? Okay, so imagine that someone caused an offense, and this is the moment where you can ask really yourself: do I speak up now in front of everyone where it happened, or should I maybe wait and talk with the person privately? Then think about timing. Is this the moment where I really need to say it, or can it wait? If I say it now, will maybe derail the meeting. And finally, relationship. This is also, again, about those assumptions. Think about your relationship with the person that you want to speak up for. Do they really want me to speak up about this? Do I know how exactly they want me to speak up? Do I know how they would like this issue to be discussed? Or maybe they don't even want it brought up at all. That's why when we want to speak up about something that's important to us, if we see an unfair treatment, we have to remember that we are first and foremost, we're speaking up for ourselves. You don't bring, especially if you don't know the person, don't bring them up in the conversation. Just state that what just happened is against what you believe in, it's against what you value. So in a way, you're speaking up for yourself and for your own values. This is very, very important, because if we don't think about, we're going to take away agency. Let's move on to the next slide quickly. Now, this is a scenario that what I would like you to read. And please just read the scenario. And when you're done, give me a small cue in the chat that you're done. This is a real example from one of our participants, a real example of exclusion. So just please read the scenario and let me know when you're ready. Maybe an emoji, anything. Okay. It has some emojis coming in. So now what I would like you to do is first identify where did exclusion happen in this scenario. And then when you've identified where, the important thing that I would like us to discuss here is what could have been more inclusive. So imagine that you're someone external and that you came here in this situation before Lee Won resigned, and tell me what could have been done that this doesn't happen. How could have been stopped? How could this environment, Lee Won's environment, been more inclusive? What do you think? What could have been more inclusive? What could have been done to avoid, in this case, a very gifted technical designer? We get an answer from Craig. Lots of microaggressions being talked over, others taking credit for his ideas, some ageism. Yes, that's what's happening, definitely. You mapped it out really well. His ideas weren't listened to, his name wasn't respected, his age and experience were used against him. Thank you, identified it very well. Now let's think about what could have been done. This is also, we're trying here to put ourselves in a position of what do we do when we see that inclusion is missing? What do we do when people are excluded? How do we fix it? What can we do? What does this team need? Maybe what does the manager need to stop this from happening, to make the environment more inclusive for Leave On, but for others as well? Okay, so we have one suggestion: scheduling social outings with the team during the day rather than evenings so that he could be included. Okay, I like this one, definitely getting helping each other get meet each other better. Yes, sorry. From Elisa, if the issue was the language, I would have offered to help him prep for his presentation and key messages so he could have been delivered more clearly. And after I made sure he was okay with him, if I were in the room, I would have spoken up and make sure no one interrupted them. Definitely, this is the part where I like how you added the allyship, the speaking up part of actually making sure that he is listened to. And definitely, it could be valuable to help him do presentations better. But what I would really like to emphasize here is, while that would be helpful for him, for his career development, we do not want, like we mentioned before, at no point, we don't want to put the responsibility on the excluded and marginalized to fix the situation. So here, it really is the questions: what do others need to do to make this environment more inclusive? It's not on the excluded to figure out their way to get out of it, or maybe to make themselves, I don't know, more smart, to make their language better or something like that, because that really perpetuates that perspective, that mindset, and that view that there's something wrong with them, that sometimes they're not enough and they need to improve. No, it's the environment that needs to improve and that needs to become more inclusive. So Tanya, they need some inclusion training. Yes, they definitely need some inclusion training. Thank you. Advocate for Leave On. Speak up for him in meetings. Ask for a pause in the meeting so his ideas can be heard. Yes, this is a very simple and effective one, very practical. Someone in the team should have spoken to Leave On to ask whether he would like to be more involved. I like that. It's also about creating the psychological safety, right? Even like, could he even come up and say? I don't think so, not in this environment. It's not psychologically safe at all. Then from Samantha, I have often stopped someone who was finishing a sentence for someone whose first language wasn't English and asked the person, was that what you meant? And they then responded, actually, no. And were allowed to then finish their own sentence, which had a different intention. Samantha, this is a wonderful example. And I've seen myself so many times. I'm sure that others as well. It happens very often, very impatient. And I think very often, this is where curiosity leaves the room. Now, another answer: manager and team should have listened to him completely and supported him with his ideas. Then Laura, have a group discussion about workplace agreements and what kind of workplace they want. This could help the team realize that they value inclusion, and that would help the team keep each other accountable. Victor, show real interest in and to integrate him as one of us. Yes, but appreciate, again from Samantha, but appreciate that might have made someone feel more accountable. So it was read on the situation. Sorry, Samantha, I'm struggling with this one. If you can help me elaborate more, elaborate more, please, on this one. And the next one we have here: when his ideas were accepted, Be sure to give Lee Von the recognition publicly and repeatedly. Yes, absolutely. This is what was happening here. Someone else was taking his ideas. So really what would have helped a lot is to put in an effort to get that recognition for Lee Von's idea publicly and repeatedly. If, again, this is what he wants and how he wants it to be done. We don't want to make any assumptions, as we mentioned previously. Then Carolina, make him feel appreciated, especially for working late. Sometimes a simple recognition and a thank you means a lot for people. That's very much true. It's not enough. It's definitely not enough, especially if we're asking too much, and if that's repeated. Just a plain thank you. It's a nice thing to get, but it's definitely not enough, especially if it's in some way really, again, excluding us, really affecting our work-life balance is excluding us. But definitely a recognition and a thank you, absolutely necessary. It's the bare minimum, really, if you think about it a bit. Then another answer we have here, he needs to be more looked after by his team members and take in consideration his ideas and contributions. Here, I agree with that part of really it's the awareness, it's the awareness of the privilege that they have, and awareness that if they're leveraging that privilege, what is it doing to Lee Von's position, how much he can contribute. Then again, call him by his name as he requested. Again, a bare minimum. A name is a very important thing. If we refuse to use a name that a person specifically introduced themselves with and ask us to use that name, that is absolutely taking away so much of how they will feel in that position. It is very, very disrespectful. So we should always make sure that we do the bare minimum, call people by their name. And the next one we have here, his manager and colleagues should have taken the time to know, understand, and allow one to contribute in their work. Yes, I agree. The team's manager leader should lead by example. Again, that's the accountability. Then it's interesting. How do we ask for that accountability in practice? Think about that one for your own organizations. Where is the accountability missing, and how can we ask for it? Okay, thank you, Samantha. Sorry if I was in reference to the previous point. Yeah, thank you. It's a case-by-case basis whether you can stop the interpreter. It has to be in a case where the person being interrupted won't be made more uncomfortable by the correction of the interpreter. Yes, again, in other cases, a colleague with a stutter, I spoke to them after, and then they spoke to your boss about the situation to have it resolved more widely. Thank you very well. It really, I think, emphasized more about the point about allyship and agency and not making assumptions. Does the person want us to speak up for them? Do we know that person? Because we might feel very, very like a huge sense of urgency that we need to speak up right now. This is not okay. And then we make this situation even worse. We can make them a center of attention because of what we've done. And this is the last thing. It could be horrific for them. It can make them feel even worse and even more excluded, really. Carolina, in this particular case, if his direct boss did not believe in him, could be a problem in the hiring process. Sometimes if the hiring process did not spot the correct rank, for example, the expectations later are not met, which also creates big issues. Well, this is an interesting one as well. If it happened that he's in if I understood well, if it happened that he's in a position that he's not really qualified for, then it could be a problem with the hiring process. Correct me if I didn't understand well, sorry, but that can definitely happen, absolutely. And the person who's hired will suffer again. In this case, it wasn't although the case with Lee Von. He still is a very gifted technical designer, and he was very capable to do his job and to do very, very, very well. But the environment that he worked in was the thing that actually drove him out. And we have another one here regarding interruptions. It depends a lot on the culture. Cultural awareness may be needed. And this is a very good one. Carolina, thank you for bringing that one up. We will have more masterclasses. So we had more masterclasses before, and the one you might really want to join in next time as well is reading between the lines. It's about communicating between cultures. And it's really about those interruptions. Different cultures talk in different ways. And sometimes we have big silences in between. Sometimes in some cultures, it's completely normal to jump into each other's sentences. And we need to be aware of that as well also. What does silence mean? It doesn't, for some people, it's not uncomfortable. It might be uncomfortable for us and push us in direction to think that maybe something's wrong, that maybe we need to fill in those silences. Maybe someone is not jumping in our responses because they don't respect us. It's just culturally what they're really used to. And it's really normal for them to engage in conversation that way. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I love your responses. They were very, very, very insightful. And I can see that you really thought about what we mentioned before in the masterclass. Now, let's jump into the next slide quickly. And the last slide. It's really about, key learning. The key learning slide where we summarize what we learned before. So really it's about that inclusive mindset. It's about cultural intelligence, really bringing those attitude, awareness, knowledge, and skills. Attitude. Are we asking the right questions? Are we open? Where is that cultural humility? How do we bring about that openness to difference? Are we asking enough questions? The second one, awareness. What is our really a cultural background, and how does it shape us? Are we really are we aware of how others' cultural backgrounds shapes them? It really starts from self-awareness. So it will help us be aware of how it affects other people as well. Again, knowledge. It's our responsibility. Are we dedicated to learning more? Are we really aware who is the person that we're working with? What is affecting them? And then skills, those very important skills that we discussed. Curiosity, asking the right questions. Who am I working with? Why are they acting the way they are? Are they maybe vocal? Are they too silent? Why are they too silent? Is it normal for them, or they maybe are not getting enough room? Courage, admitting our mistakes, being brave. Really, inclusion is not an easy task. And like we discussed at the beginning, why is it challenging to talk about diversity? It is challenging to talk about diversity because we are afraid. We're afraid that we're going to offend someone. But being brave is still stepping in because it's the only place where we can learn. But admitting our mistakes when they happened. The difference is, how do we react to that feedback when we get it wrong? Are we thankful, grateful that we'll learn something new and do our best to make sure that it doesn't happen again, or do we get defensive? The next one, cognizance, being aware. How does my behavior affect others? How does my background shape my world? And how does it differ from other people's views, right? And then the next one, we had collaboration. Think about collaboration. How can I include those people that I see that they need to be included more? They're missing in some way. How do I engage them? What questions do I ask? How do I invite them really to the table? How do we disagree? How do we find a common ground? That's collaboration. And finally, commitment. Committing to being an ally and committing to asking for accountability. Do not let performative inclusion be the norm. We can really commit by asking for accountability to bring that authentic inclusion, because performative inclusion is more harmful than ignoring the issue of diversity inclusion at all. So that's what we need to commit to, and we need to be brave. It is scary, we might cause offense, but be brave anyway, because this is the only place that we can learn. Thank you so much, and please don't forget about the learning path. Please, producer, if you can share. Yeah, this is the email that you can you can contact, right? If you want to access the learning path and see all the different materials that are there connected to this topic, so you can really further your learning. Thank you all. You were wonderful. I've really enjoyed the session, and I really learned a lot from you as well. I hope that you enjoyed, and join us for the next masterclass as well. Thank you. And don't forget about the feedback questionnaire at the end. It will help us a lot to improve. Thank you. Bye.